So let's face it, when it comes to HHO, when you're out of electricity, you're basically out of gas. So electricity is a very important part of HHO. We're going to get into that in the next video, okay? What I want to talk about in this video is the water molecule. Just in this short flick, I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that the atoms have a native intelligence, okay? These atoms know what to do, and I'll tell you how they do that, okay? I guess it's given to them by their creator, whoever designed all this. An atom says to itself, it says, I must remain in a stable state, okay? It'll do anything to get back to stability. They don't like being unstable, you know? Everything on the table of elements, it's very rare to see, you know, elements laying around on their own. You're not going to see pure elements just laying around, okay? Not all of them, okay? Hydrogen just isn't sitting around. It's too sociable for that. It's an atom that's combined with many other things. So it's one thing to know. You know, they want to have these electron shells full. They'll do anything to fill those outer shells, okay? They'll go through great lengths to do that. And knowing this makes it easy for us to understand. You know, we can understand a lot more about the atom and how it behaves when it's subjected to external forces. Helps us predict the atom, what their next move will be, what they will do, okay? Same with electrons. You know, the negatively charged electron, that's a subatomic particle that we're going to be working with a lot here. It's very important. They're electron shells, these orbitals, the movement of electrons back and forth. It's where the light comes from. A lot of people ask me, you know, where does the light come from? It comes from these atoms. They have this polarity and they can repel and attract each other. A lot of people don't know this. So this helps us predict what the atom's going to do, knowing this, knowing they have this native intelligence given to them by their creator. They'll do anything to come back together again. They don't like to be in an unstable state. So if you like the end of this hose, these water molecules are going to turn back into steam, and the hydrogen and oxygen are going to recombine very quickly. Just like that. So I took a picture on my phone here the other day, and I freeze the frame, and I took all the flash arrestor material out of the top of the reactor. And I couldn't believe the color that you see here. Okay, so it doesn't take a genius. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the tremendous amount of energy that's being released from the water under a flashback. Okay, this potential energy is being released in the form of light, heat, and sound. Okay, the flashback arrestor is stopping that. It's an excellent way to sandwich these things in between a solar panel and capture that energy. You can turn photons directly back into electricity. The water can absolutely provide us with an endless stream of electrons and electricity. Think about that. It's an exothermic chain reaction. You can use this device to capture those flashbacks. So here's the problem with things like butane and propane and a lot of these other fuels you see out there. Say they give off a lot of carbon. These hydrocarbons give off this black soot. You know, it gives off a brown smog that doesn't support life. You know, so it's foolish to pollute the land, air, and the sea. That's one of our biggest problems right there. You can clearly see it. And a hydrogen flame won't do that. It just produces water when burned. Yeah. So here we go. Don't be afraid to have outside lighting on your reactors. Okay? When you're working with HHO, you want to see what's happening in the water column, especially if it's full of swamp water. You're not going to be able to see through there with your normal LED when it gets higher up in the column. So here I'm going to show you this flash arrestor I got here. This is where I got it, at greenfuelh2o.com. This is probably one of the best flash arrestors I've seen for HHO for the price. It's really good. It works really well. It's never failed me. So if you want a really good flash arrestor, that's where I bought it. You can find this guy right here on YouTube, Steve. He's really good HHO technology there. You can see the gas coming in here. It's very loud. I'm going to go ahead and cut the end of this hose so you can see a flashback. Okay? So when you burn HHO, it just makes water. So that's the only byproduct of HHO. Okay, when you burn this gas, it turns back into water again when the water molecules recombine. Okay? So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to close that. We're going to go ahead and test his flash arrestor. I'm going to cut the hose off and we'll test it. Let me edit the video, it'll be easier. So using a really good flash arrestor like this, you know, when you're producing oxyhydrogen gas, even though you don't want it to go back to the reactor, it always could, so it has to be designed in case that happens. I mean, it can happen infinitely with this reactor. It doesn't matter how many flashbacks you have, it can handle, there's no limit. And then you could even further that security by having a flashback arrestor. So I'm going to light the end of this again. You know, it stops it every time. So a professional grade one is the way to go. You got to purchase that online. You can make your own using this material. Okay, having this you know, bronze wool, this really fine rust resistant bronze wool will only get you so far, but it does make a really good flash arrestor, and it has to be replaced from time to time. But a professional grade one can handle thousands and thousands of flashbacks, and it's not going to pass here. Okay, but never rely on that alone. Always have a reactor that you can count on. It's very important when working with HHO. So the Greeks came up with the word hydrogen. Hydro meaning water and gen means giver in Greek, or maker. Okay, so hydro maker or hydro giver. So that's how they came up with the word hydrogen, if you didn't know. When you take a look at the atomic state of the hydrogen atom here, and understand when you reburn it and it just turns back into water again, you got to understand that that is not consuming resources. That's very important. Turn this on. Okay, so when you get all this going, you're not consuming any resources, you're just burning the water and it turns back into water again. Okay, that's what's going on here. So I'm gonna set this up right now to do a flashback and show you. So we have enough potential energy to travel across the galaxy in something like this. Think about that. You know, 10 times over. So fuel is no longer your concern. It's the electricity that you got to come up with. See, there's the catch. You have to have electricity to do this. Whether you get it from solar, thermal, you know, there's a lot of different ways to produce electricity using motors, waterfalls. You can get electricity a million different ways. It's not hard to do. You can come up with electricity. It's a very abundant resource, just like the water. Okay, and it's just used over and over again. You know, electricity is used just like the water. It turns back into a reusable resource every time. Okay, so when it combusts and burns, it can be recaptured again. And you know, depending on what type of electrodes you use and what type of a system that you're using, and there you go. Cut the hose. I'll scoot it up here so you can see it. But I like the end of it here. Instead of it going up into the blast chamber on the reactor, it's just going to go right to there. See? It was never able to go back to the reactor. So, works every time. Stops a flashback. It's amazing. I don't use these a lot. I mean, I have a couple of them for certain applications, like if I'm running the garden, sometimes for the pulsar reactor. But you see it works very well. Stops it every time. Good job, Steve. So I took a picture of this the other day on my phone. I took all the flash arrestor material out of a smaller reactor, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see the enormous amount of photon energy being released in these flashbacks. So tapping into that with solar panels and capturing these flashbacks and firing these sequences, I mean, the energies, look at the energy. That's incredible that's coming off of there. And you're making fresh water each time you do that. Every click that happens, you're making fresh water. It doesn't matter how contaminated the water is that you put in the reactor. As long as there's no chemicals in it other than the electrolyte that you add. Okay? So you're taking apart the water molecule and putting it back together again and creating these huge amount of photons. Remember that. So that's a really good way to stop those flashbacks, is by purchasing a good flash arrestor, a professional grade flash arrestor. It's really cool to watch that. I mean, every time I see this, it just amazes me. It never goes past this. I mean, I'm sure if you had enough rate and enough volume, you could slip past this flash arrestor and it would go back to the reactor almost certainly. So that's why it's good to have a design just in case that happens, so you're covered with the flash port, the blast chamber, and you have this really tall riser, so there's no way for the water to go back to another reactor. You know, it's not going to jump bubble to bubble, that flashback, but it will go down that hose like lightning. It's really fast. So here's my voltage meter, okay? Here's the electron, the subatomic particle. We're going to turn photons, okay? We're going to turn photons from this flashing yellow light that comes off of this hose through the solar panel into electrical energy, okay? I'm going to light the end of this hose. Here's the end of the hose. Watch what happens. So I'm creating electricity. Let's do that again. So if you time it with the catalyst, it runs endlessly. Okay? You don't need an electrical ignition source or anything. I just heat up the catalyst and put it in the end of the wand. And every time the gas reaches the catalyst, out of the catalytic converter I took out of a car. So I hope this video helped you understand the importance of the flash arrestor and how it can be used to produce an endless amount of electricity with some coil hoses for your flashback, your flash arrestor, and some solar panels. And then all you need is a catalytic converter. It won't work until you heat this up. You got to stuff a piece of it in the end of your wand, and once it gets hot, every time it will start your pulsing reaction. And then you'll have a reactor that can pulse and generate electricity. It looks like that. You just start wrapping these up in huge coils and sandwiching them in between solar panels. A tremendous amount of electricity can be produced